pleasant trail ride suddenly turns into a fight for survival. In our number 6 story, battling a wild predator.
Female was attacked.
It was unbelievable to me to see the damage that had been done, but I was very thankful to still be there and be alive and have survived it.
Fitness instructor and former Marine Ann Yella has been an avid mountain biker for years. In January 2004, 31-year-old Ann and her mountain biking buddy Debbie Nichols set out on a ride in Whiting Ranch Wilderness Park in Orange County, California. The two arrived at the park around 3:30 p.m. and hit the path.
That's not the best time, to be riding in a wilderness area, because that's, kind of a time that the animals will come out, but we didn't really think about it that day.
I was ahead of Debbie, headed into the trail. It's very narrow and kind of twists and turns, almost like a roller coaster, and came into a dip after a blind corner, and I saw a man standing, straddling his own bike with another bike next to him.
Thought it was kind of unusual that he was, kind of checking out why this bike was there.
After a brief conversation with the biker, Ann continued along in front of Debbie.
There was no warning ahead of time at all. I just saw a flash of movement, a reddish-brown fur over my right shoulder.
Before she had time to react, Ann was thrown off her bike and slammed to the ground.
And I could feel something hanging onto my shoulders and trying to clamp down on the back of my neck. And I knew there's only one thing out here that would do that.
Ann's attacker was a 122-pound cougar.
When you bite down on a piece of food, the bite force per square inch is around 60 pounds. When a mountain lion locks on to your neck or head, the bite force is 900 pounds per square inch. My
first instinct was to cry out, "Jesus, help me." I knew I was in very serious trouble and would most likely die, and I didn't know what to do.
Debbie arrived moments later to see her friend being dragged into a ravine by the cougar.
I just kind of came to a skidding stop, threw my bike thinking, he'll freak him out, and he'll take off. But he didn't. He had a hold of the back of her helmet.
He would drag me as far as he could, readjust, drag me again, and basically continue trying to make this progress down into the ravine.
Nichols began a frantic tug of war with the big cat.
I didn't, know what else to do, so I just grabbed her leg. He was just incredibly strong. I kept thinking, he's got to let go. And I was screaming, horrific screams.
At that point, I was laying on my back. I could see her, the fear in her eyes. I could hear her screaming and crying out for help.
Ann could feel the cougar tearing the flesh from her face.
I was pulling back, he was pulling forward, and that's when he went to her throat.
It was like a vice that literally my air supply was cut off, and I knew that this is it. I knew I was going to pass out, and once I pass out, it's over. I said goodbye to Debbie. I said, I'm going to die.
As the women cried for help, 2 other bikers heard their screams.
They drew attention to themselves. They were yelling and screaming. Other people came along, threw rocks, finally got the cat pushed off, and they were able to get her back.
I just was desperate to get her out of there. I didn't know how long the mountain lion would be gone, and her face was, slashed all the way around to her chin. It had been pulled all the way back to her nose area. It was just filled with dirt and debris, and, it was awful.
Cuts, all the way down her face, the skin hanging and everything. I thought her eye was gone.
Her breathing was really gargled, like she was drowning in her blood.
We got a lady that is attacked by a mountain lion in her face. Her face is almost gone. I need people out here at Whiting Ranch, Cactus Ridge, on Whiting Ranch. She's in bad condition. I would get somebody here now.
Miraculously, it took paramedics less than 20 minutes to arrive at the remote location. Ann was airlifted out, but she suffered nearly 50 puncture wounds on her neck and face. Her left ear and cheek were detached from the bone.
I felt like I was going to be okay, but I found out later the doctors weren't so sure. Because of the wounds to my neck, they were much more concerned about those than they were about the facial injuries.
Ann endured a series of reconstructive surgeries to repair the extensive damage to her face, but there were also psychological scars.
When I first awoke from the surgery, every time I would close my eyes, it was like watching a horror film. I mean, it was being replayed over and over.
After a traumatic experience, many people will experience difficulty sleeping. It's one of the major symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's actually one of the ways your brain processes through the crisis situation.
Still in the hospital, Anne heard more tragic news. The bike found abandoned in the park belonged to a 35-year-old cyclist named Mark Reynolds. According to investigators, Reynolds had been killed by the same cougar on the same day.
Terrible tragedy, awful. Since 1890, when they began keeping statistics in the United States and Canada, there have been 20 fatal attacks involving mountain lions. So it's extremely rare.
You know, I knew how close to death I had come, but to realize that this adult male had actually succumbed to that same lion made it all the more real to me.
Police located the cougar hours after the attacks and shot it. The road to recovery was long and difficult for Anne.
I felt completely withdrawn, and then I thought, wow, how am I gonna go to the grocery store now or whatever, you know, to take my first steps to get out in public.
Anne eventually found the confidence to face the world again.
Life hands you some tough stuff, but I also know that, you know, that good things can come out of this and have.
The first thing to survive a mountain lion encounter, do not run. Running sort of simulates the act of a prey, and so the lion will likely chase. So stand your ground, and then try to walk away very, very slowly. Those are the keys to getting through it. And if it attacks, fight as hard as you can.
Up next, adrift at sea, one man faces the terrors of the deep.
I was viewing heaven from a seat in hell.